Good morning, Lagos, and thanks a lot for staying tuned here on Smooth 98.1. It's time for Freshly Pressed 981. I'm Ayo Mairo Ese.
And I am Valentine Ohu. Good morning.
Joining us for the conversation this morning, we have Davoe Okorie.
Good morning, Lagos. Cool, South Africa. Where is the love?
All right. Davoe is at Davoe Okorie on Twitter, so you can follow him there. And we'll be going through the stories together. If you'd like to join the conversation this morning, please feel very free to do so. Use our various social media platform. WhatsApp is 0809 444 0981.
Yes, and you can send a message through Twitter. The hashtag is freshlypressed981. Tweet at smooth981fm. And use the YouTube link as well to follow the conversation. You can watch us live in the studio. Just type Smooth91FM Lagos in the search box.
Okay. All right, let's go straight into our first story. No news here. No surprises here, I beg your pardon. Xenophobic attacks, Nigerians fume, demand tough actions against South Africa firms. The Punch has this report and it's quite detailed. It lists some prominent Nigerians, special envoys as well as celebrities who have come out to condemn the attacks or the xenophobic attacks against Nigerians in South Africa. Leading this pack is the President Muhammadu Buhari, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, the Senate and the House of Representatives, expressing their displeasure over the continued killings. Davoe, can you please take us through the story?
Well, I'm sure many have been hearing all manner of news across the night and up until now. This South African Nigeria lost love debacle, termed by the xenophobic attacks that took place and are almost still taking place in some remote zones in South Africa. Now, yes, we do know that for some years now, we've been having sporadic attacks on Nigerians within South Africa, some based on misbehavior and largely some unknown and unrelated. So in this case, given what took place in Pretoria, where some anger was taken out on Nigerian businesses without police protection or reaction, it has come to almost full circle. And I think many Nigerians have reacted in many ways. And in this case, government did take a position yesterday by the presidency mentioned that they had called, that was through the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they called a meeting with the South African ambassador, who then stated that it was just largely criminal acts that took place. The Minister of Foreign Affairs said that no, they will be sending an envoy down with police to work with them. Secondly, that the compensation should be given. And then the presidency added on top that that special envoy would be going down. Now, I think to a large extent, even with the vice president's condemnation, this is largely weak on behalf of our government because there's a long history between Nigeria and South Africa. And there's zero foreign policy at stake. It looks like it's a knee-jerk reaction once again. And our impact has completely been lost within the Committee of States because prior to this time, even the SA's government's response, when the president did respond, it was almost tongue-in-cheek by saying that there should be no violence against foreign nationals. That's almost offensive. If not to say the least, because we do know that, yes, Nigerians were not the only ones attacked, but specifically, we were largely the ones that were being hit in this xenophobic attack by South Africans. And this is not to say that all South Africans are xenophobic. And this is not to say that, because in some cases it takes place in low-income neighborhoods. However, the stance that they have taken, and they're not able to protect us and they're not able to defend us, it even spread to other Africans. Because the white people, those who came from Europe and the Americas, were not being attacked. Their businesses were still there untouched. It seemed as if it was clear that it was targeted at Africans, most especially Nigerians. Even the truck drivers, they were burning trucks that had non-South African black truck drivers. That was a major issue there. And also Nigerian businesses scattered around. Now, because it was misleading, Nigerians back here who took up the law into their hands, which we would use this opportunity to condemn. That Nigerians attacking South African-owned businesses you perceive to be South African, like ShopRite, Pep Shops, DSTV, MTN, is hurting yourself. We're shooting ourselves in the foot because even though they came here and they set up business, those businesses are largely, almost 95% Nigerian employees, okay?
Franchises as well.
Franchises. Secondly, they're also, to a large extent, Nigerian-owned.
All right, now let me use that to take you to the comments made by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema. I have a few comments. I'd like some of the people who reacted. I'd like to highlight a few. Geoffrey Oyema had said there will be no reprisal attacks. Unfortunately, we saw a few of this. Even though misguided, we saw this, and I'd like to understand.
Last night there was the free go and bonanza at many of the ShopRites scattered around Lagos, and even outside Lagos, Enugu, in Abuja, in Shongotedo, in Jakonde.
All right, very quickly, I'll take you through a few. So he also mentioned that security personnel would be dispatched to South Africa to work with security personnel on ground. I want to ask the question: do we have enough here in Nigeria to be able to take some, send some abroad?
First of all,
let me just take so that you answer everything at once. And then the High Commissioner in South Africa, the Nigerian High Commissioner to South Africa, is taking a database of those who have been injured. I'd like to understand if their response is adequate. And finally, a warrant statement made by the Chief Whip, Orji Uzo Kalu, Chief Whip of the 9th Senate, Dr. Orji Kalu, who said that Nigerians should retaliate rather than wait on the South Africans to fish out the perpetrators.
How about the
Isn't
government?
that even an insightful statement? Should that have been made by such a principal officer of the Senate?
Well, the truth is this, government has not, like I said, zero foreign policy. We don't have a strategy towards this, which is what those in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are meant to do. This knee-jerk reaction of, let's do this little thing, let's send people there. No. It's not a one-time event. It's a collation of a relationship, okay? Now, under the diplomatic court, there are many steps you can take, and we have done them in the past before. During the time of apartheid, apart from supporting the South African government, not the South African, the ANC, that was considered terrorist in those days, the Nigerian government at that time made a move on the government by letting them know that they would clamp down on some of their industries in Nigeria if they give free way to the South African ANC. Those were some of the diplomatic back channel options that were taken. Here in Nigeria, if you remember last time that they treated some of our National Assembly members badly, some of their assembly members here were expelled. You can expel the ambassador immediately as a strong signal that we are completely disgusted with their behavior. You can deport key officials. You can even raise, right in our front last week, the American government taught us a lesson in diplomatic pressure. They raised the visa fee overnight, and we responded within 24 hours. So what are we talking about?
Let's take some comments because a number of people are reacting to this.
Political will. Now, IBJ says the South African government needs to be more responsible in tackling their so-called technical recession rather than blaming the economic woes on foreigners. It is obviously socio-political, but these are collateral effects that come with such damaging statements. Odigure David says, concerning the spontaneous uproar of the Nigerian youth yesterday, though I do not subscribe to public violence, but the government see this as a wake-up call and a vote of no confidence due to their inefficiencies on all fronts. Maybe it's high time we boycott all those South African investments. It's such a shame that the South Africa government are the mainstream runners of shopping malls, telecommunications, cable TV. Shame on our government. Abimbola Agba says, Oga Davoe, why are you contradicting yourself? You said it was an insult on the citizenry of the government to say Nigerians shouldn't attack SA businesses, yet you're condemning the attacks. He specifically, Davoe specifically said that we're attacking ourselves, businesses, especially franchises.
You're attacking yourselves.
And run by Nigerians. So there's a difference there. And needless to mention that really some of these thugs and criminal elements are taking advantage of what's going on to loot shops,
and may I say that your anger should be with the government that has failed you in protecting and defending your social welfare, not with private businesses that are trying to help you. Let's not be the same as those that were trying to attack or say that we don't like what they're doing. We have to act as people who know what they're doing.
All right, thank you very much. Now, another area to which we should grievance or anger should be corruption. Now, this news story from Guardian states that the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) accuses the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) Director Ita, that's Solomon Okpa Ita, of using NGOs to embezzle government funds, so using non-governmental organizations to embezzle funds for personal use. Can you please take us through this story, Davoe?
All right, the ICPC has given us a crackdown on one of the investigations. It's about time because we've not really been hearing so much from the ICPC. Well, they had accused one of the directors of the NDDC, that's the Niger Delta Development Commission, Mr. Solomon Okpa Ita, of using NGOs as a front to embezzle funds. And basically, the dynamics here was that the NDDC would issue some funds to the NGOs for one reason or the other, and then these NGOs would then transfer the money to a private account, and then the owner of that private account would then transfer it to the ownership of this director.
Yes.
And they saw that, and they were able to trace that for the funds like of 20 million and 45 million. These are all transfers that we were able to trace and find out all came to Mr. Solomon Ita.
Okay.
Now, currently what they've done is to freeze some of his properties because they've said that he could not confirm or prove how he was able to acquire these properties with his basic salary. And he has houses and petrol stations, etc. and co. So we are waiting, although as part of the story tied to the Niger Delta, disputing the chairmanship designate of the NDDC, that's Chief Bernard Kumaba, in saying that he didn't come from a petroleum producing.
All right. Now, this isn't news in terms of NGOs being a front for embezzlement of funds or embezzling funds. What tighter controls can we have for NGOs in Nigeria? Because at the moment, it seems that there's no overarching body to check the activities of these NGOs.
Ewa, I hope you are not working for government. There were bids, if you remember, that was during the joint administration. There were, and the issue with NGOs, their probity and their integrity was tested during the issues that churches had to pay taxes. If you remember, at the time, some members of the National Assembly did say that churches are unregulated. And at that point, the argument in terms of where they're established, because NGOs and churches, religious bodies, form non-profit bodies that are not taxed by government. But it was proven to some extent that many of them had been acquired funds. And that was the tough fight between the then chairman of the FIRS, I can't remember, who stated that NGOs and churches must report their corporate earnings. And some of them kicked back and said, no, it's not right for them to disclose such. But that was the whole idea at that point. So that is where it's tightened, because around the world, there is probity, there's accountability to government. Yes, they're not enforcing how you spend your funds, which was an attempt by some members in the House some years ago. However, you must make accounts to ensure that it's transparent. Anyone, if you are above board, you have nothing to hide. So in this case, the ICPC has uncovered, and this is not so much about NGOs, this is actually about this institution and how proper audit needs to take place regularly, because we do know all the rumors and the reputation that the NDDC has. The last Niger Delta minister did quote on his leaving that upon the 800 billion that was spent through his ministry, he could only prove one project that was finished. So at the end of the day, are these ministries and agencies developments organs, or are they opportunities for embezzling many funds to private hands?
Thank you very much.
Tokwe from Sri Larry says, good morning. What if I told you, still talking on the xenophobia issue, it says, what if I told you that most of the Nigerians, mostly drug dealers, I know for a fact that these attacks are just community vigilante gone wrong. I saw with my eyes in Joburg how our people took over buildings and turned them to brothels. Lots of these businesses are fronts for cartels. We do not know how to behave ourselves in foreign countries. That's what Tokwe says.
But does that justify?
Yes, can I say something to Tokwe? Yes, Nigerians, to a large extent, a large portion of Nigerians in South Africa are related to drug pushing and 419. However, that bad misconduct should not be joined with the attack on innocent people.
Right.
It's important you don't twist it together.
All
You
right.
cannot use the misdemeanor of a few and generalize that upon a whole nation.
And that is absolutely right, because some actually something very important to consider on Twitter. He said, are there discussions at the African Union level with regards to these xenophobic attacks? This problem is larger than Nigeria.
African Union is sleeping.
Other African foreigners or African nationals are hurt too. AU silence is hurting.
Thank you very much, Sam. Very quickly, I'll go on to this one in the banking sector. The bank verification exercise, number exercise, slow enrollment sparks concern over 2020 targets from New Telegraph. So from this report, from 33 million registered bank users in 2018, we've only increased by 9 million to 38.9 million, or 6 million, I beg your pardon, to 38.9 million, even though there's a target to meet by 2020. Davoe, can you tell us why, some of the reasons identified for this slow enrollment?
Well, basically, the CBN has been trying to drive financial inclusion, and one of the angles to that is the acquiring of the BVN. Okay, some of you know the BVN, but largely that hasn't been cut across everyone, and the BVN has been a tool to enhance this.
Yes.
Now, currently, they've enrolled about 33 million people. If you remember a few years ago when they started, many people had to leave their accounts alone because the BVN does connect you with all the accounts.
Yeah.
So if you had registered or enrolled improperly in those days where people would change their names or change of marriage or misspelt in one place or the other, the BVN exposed all of this.
Yeah.
Now, what the CBN has done is that what they're saying is that their target is to push the 33 million currently enrolled to about 17 million. That's more than double by 2020. And to do this, they're working with banks. They're working with attempts that they intend to do is to provide about available for some of these agents, some of these operators to get a hold of, to be able to create 500,000 shared agency network points around the nation, and these are basically so that it could into the remote area, so each and every one can get one, so that you can begin to enjoy the benefits of having the BVN. I might say that many of the new financial operators have been taking advantage of it. The reason why so much money is available now, and that most of the finance operators are pushing come and collect money, especially to the salaried working class folks, is because the BVN gives them that integrity back check to enable them to push this. So it is important, and we hope they do fulfill their targets.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Davoe. Domestic airfare rises by 25% on aviation fuel scarcity. Warren News here from Thisday newspaper earlier today during Business Express 91. I think was he who had shared his experience or to ask for it to be talked about with regards to delayed flights. So we're still talking about the hiccups we encounter in the aviation sector now. And almost an artificial scarcity of aviation fuel, airfare is rising by 25%.
And they're saying that cost is being borne or transferred to consumers or customers.
Yes, obviously. This story actually is highlighted from the airline operators. We know the many local airline operators that are actually directly affected by this. And at the end of the day, the aviation cost, that's A1, aviation fuel has risen from between 180 and naira per liter to about 230 to 270 per liter. That's roughly an average 25% cost. And you do know that aviation is a highly marginal industry. Therefore, whatever they get hit with, they directly pass it on to passengers. Now, it's not just the flights that are affected in terms of the airfare. You also have delayed flights. Even in some cases, like Dana mentioned, they had to cancel some flights because they couldn't source aviation fuel. Now, this scarcity is even more compounded because you know of all the insecurity issues that have taken place in terms of banditry and kidnapping. Many of our roads have not been accommodating to travelers and movement of cargo. So many have been following flights as a means of protecting themselves. Now, the non-availability of the product in places like Kano, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Warri, and Sokoto have forced many airlines to tanker some of the fuel they can get from Lagos to those parts, which is slowing down the process, which is leading to the delays and the cancellations. Now, fortunately, this article doesn't state NNPC's position on the matter as to why there is scarcity to this extent. If you do remember the last time there was scarcity, it caused a lot of uproar because there was some sharp practices that was took kerosene, that's DPK, which has similar characteristics as ATK, that's the Jet A1 fuel, to sell to them. So all of a sudden, kerosene disappeared from the market or was sold at almost at 400 naira and above. Some airline operators were substituting, which is also a hazard for their flight. So we hope the NNPC steps up its intervention to ensure that the aviation stability required for flights comes back.
Thank you.
Lorenzo sent in a message. It's actually a question on WhatsApp. Lorenzo is asking what the benefits of BVN are. Well, Lorenzo, to answer your question, BVN helps to reduce fraud, to increase the efficiency of banking operations, and also enable customers access to future credit facilities. Let's jump to this next story from Thisday newspaper. Make security forces accountable for rights abuse. It's a call from the United Nations rapporteur to President Buhari. She's the rapporteur, special rapporteur for extrajudicial, summary, or arbitrary executions, Ms. Agnes Calamard. She called on President Muhammad Buhari to hold Nigerian security forces accountable to their dealings with civilians, insurgents, religious groups, and separatist movements across the country. And we all know it's very closely related to the recent events, especially the clampdown on IMN and some other extrajudicial killings that have been reported in the news lately. Your thoughts on this as she compiles this final report to the United Nations Human Rights Council?
I don't think it's new, and I hate the fact anytime it takes an international body or persons to be able to highlight or to bring to our presence some of the areas that we are challenged in. And just this government, many governments in the past within the country have fallen short of defending the human rights that we are also signed to. Okay, now the lady involved here, that's Miss Agnes Calamard. She is the United Nations Special Rapporteur for extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions. Now, she's actually done a clean job here, and she's looked through with her team. They have worked with some of our various security agencies to come to this point. And what she noted and had to repeat was there were well-documented allegations, of extrajudicial killings, allegations of failure to protect, and this is the case most times when you also hear that the army was in one place, it disappeared, the mutiny that took place, you sent us here, etc. I mean, we've heard those stories, and there were about 20 commissions of inquiry, and this is all the committee upon committee that never come to a conclusion. Panels, fact-finding exercises established by the federal government, state government, and military, and even the National Human Rights Commission that have not been given fair hearing. Now, to the context of the military having contentions with separatist groups like the IMNN, the Indigenous People of Biafra, that's IPOB, and then the Niger Delta Avengers, as far back the detentions that have taken place. Now, yes, she's taking this to the United Nations, and I'm sure Nigeria, as a member then, the Security Council that we have been fighting for seats on, this does not help our case, and it doesn't speak well of us. Now, it behooves this government to check itself. It behooves this government to be sure of how it goes about handling some of the insecurity matters within the country. Remember, for some time now, this government has been clamping down on dissent. And dissent is simply when you have a different view from government, when you disagree with their view, their stand, or their approach. And in recent times, as some would say, just for the use of an adjective, Some were detained and have been locked up. In other cases, just for seeking self-actualization, which is some of the positions of some of the recent groups that were called terrorists. Some have been clamped down. So at the end of the day, there is some truth to the position that she's taken. And we need to check ourselves at the end of the day, because we need to build a country that we all can be proud of, we all can be safe to live in, and have laws that we can abide by.
If this goes to, as she has said, is going to be taken to the Human Rights Commission,
Yes.
the United Nations Human Rights Commission for 2020, if this report now goes there and they find Nigeria culpable in some of these allegations, what do you suppose will be the consequence, if there is any?
Well, I mean, Nigeria, it's not like I will go and tell teacher. Nigeria is a sovereign nation, okay? When bad news is brought about you, especially on the international front, like I said, diplomatic measures are taken. That's when you begin to see, like you hear most times, sanctions are carried out. Just Russia was expelled from the G8 simply because of the human rights violations that they took with Ukraine and Crimea, okay? Same thing could happen to Nigeria. Two, like I said, we have been pursuing a seat on the Security Council, being the big brother in Africa, pushing our men, providing our men and money and arms to many of the what do you call them, fights that take place, peacekeeping missions. Yes, this damages our position in getting that seat. So it's our own responsibility to revise this and ensure that we meet up as expected.
Thank you. We have a comment from Yinka. Yinka says, yesterday on one of the usual suspect delaying airlines, my flight was meant to be boarded at 17:55, but we didn't start boarding until around 7:15 p.m. For the flight to Lagos, where I was rushing to meet up someone, the flight to Yola was delayed for about 55 minutes. One elderly dude next to me, looked frustrated. The anger is, these guys don't even compensate us. And then Shegun, still on the airfare increase, says if airfares are increased by 25% because there is a 25% increase in aviation fuel, the airlines are stylishly profiting more from the increase, since aviation fuel is only a fraction of their costs. 45% according to the reports of their costs.
Well, he has a point, but the truth is, it is a marginal business. And at the end of the day, like I said, we're waiting to see NNPC's position to ensure that they can return this place to normalcy. And then in the larger picture, the PGID, which is the complete deregulation of the petroleum product sector, so that other players can come in to ensure that we have sufficiency all year round.
Thank you very much, Davoe. Let's touch on this final story from Premium Times. The presidential candidate is accused of fraud. That's the one representing Hope Democratic Party, HDP, for the 2019 election. Says he wants 500 million naira as compensation from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Said they took him to court, but they went ahead to publish his name, seeking redress for libel and some other, defaming suits that he's pushing through his lawyer. But take us through this story, Davoe.
Well, Mr. What's his name? Mr. Omoru's fundamental rights suits is at the stables of the EFCC now, where he was charged for obtaining money for a false pretense. Now, he was evading his trial, and the High Court duly issued an arrest of a warrant against him. Now, the truth is this. He has a right, and we're hoping that the judicial system works as it should be. The EFCC, as a party to the charge, will have to defend its case as to how it came up with those issues. He has maintained that the suit was filed as a libel case instead of a fundamental rights case to enforce his position. Well, at the end of the day, a lot takes place in politics. Anytime you make a move to become a leader within a country like Nigeria, some parties are not going to be happy. And in so doing, they're going to dig up a lot of dirt on you. So you've got to be ready to face this when you go into the murky waters of politics.
But it'd be interesting to highlight that on the 7th of August, the News Agency of Nigeria had reported that the case came up before Justice Taiwo for a land transaction issue involved with the EFCC, but that case was withdrawn. But the EFCC's counsel had now gone ahead to insist that the criminal case was still pending before the court and had not been withdrawn. This is why he sought for that compensation in the said sum. But let's go through a few messages before we go.
All right, let's stay with YouTube for this one. Oluwaseun Rufai says there is a cadre of people, that's Africans, being targeted. I guess they aren't touching the professionals and students there. Our government needs to act fast. Still talking on the xenophobic attacks on Nigerians in South Africa.
We want to thank you especially for your messages. We apologize for not being able to go through a majority of them, a lot of messages, but we'll attend to them even after the show. Let's continue the conversation on social media with the hashtag FreshlyPressed981.
A big thanks to Davoe Okorie. Thank you for joining us
Thank
this
you.
morning.
No more looting.
Davoe
Our brothers in South Africa, we love them, but they're behaving badly.
All right, Davoe is at Davoe Okorie on Twitter. Follow us at Smooth981FM using the hashtag FreshlyPressed981 to continue the conversation. Next up, we bring you sports news in the locker room 981. Stay tuned.
The headlines. The story.
Why are they shaking me?
You're happy now.
I'm not happy. I'm not happy. It's not about me.
No, it's not about you.
You need to see what's